Andrea, you like going to wellness retreats. Have you ever been to one that was just totally killer?
Thankfully, no.
Well, this is Eric.
This is Andrea.
This is Hallmark Mysteries and
And
more.
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel.
I have never been to a retreat where a dead body appears. Thankfully, no. Have I been to a killer, amazing, fun retreat? Yes, a lot of those. Which, if you are new to our podcast, we are going back in time and reviewing Gourmet Detective. And we are taking the second movie this week, which is called A Healthy Place to Die. This one is one of my favorites. So I'll kind of kick us off and read a little recap about the movie. It starts off with Detective Maggie's up for vacation and Gourmet Detective Henry's speaker. Oh, I got this off IMDb because I couldn't find it on Hallmark and I didn't proof it. Also, if you're new to the podcast, IMDb's descriptions are not good. So let me, in my mind, as I'm reading this, proof it for us all. So Henry is going to be a speaker at a gourmet conference, which also has a spare suite. There's a reporter, Kathleen. She's murdered there. Her body's missing. They investigate and banter. I feel like that's an AI
They
description. If I've ever
investigate and
seen one,
banter.
that's what it says. This description, again,
You know
it's
what,
just
though?
me
It's
copy,
not
paste, read. Not good. It's not
it's
good.
not lying, though.
It's
They do
not. It's very
investigate and they do
precise.
banter.
And reporter Kathleen is murdered there, dash, body missing. That does all happen in this episode as well.
I'm wondering, do we even have to do the review now? It's
I
all
don't think
summed up.
so. That's it right there. So my son actually, I put this on. I watched it, well, obviously many times, but my son watched a little bit of this with me as well because he had no TV until 10 a.m. and it was 6 a.m. and we were already up and I was watching this, so he gave it a whirl. He enjoyed this episode, I will say, or this movie. He didn't give me a number. I asked to have his number and he said no number. He just said it was good. My number is 5 out of 5. This again is my favorite. For me, Henry's. I find the house, Henry's actual house. So if we go back to the start of this episode, he is at home in San Francisco, and it's like a bougie, nice house, which fits Henry as a person. The retreat that they go to, like the suite, Maggie's suite that she's staying in, is amazing. Like
The
that's a
presidential.
it's a bougie room, which of course that would fit Henry and his personality. So when we talked about Dylan having to fight for Henry's kind of bouginess, like this to me feels very much like who this character would be based on his knowledge and what he's interested in. So I also wrote down that I was amazed at Henry's chopping skills in that opening scene because if Dylan doesn't actually cook, but the way he chops those vegetables, I need to learn how to chop vegetables better, is my lesson because I was impressed with that. Brendan Penny is in this movie, so in case there's any Brendan Penny fans out there, not a huge role, but he's one of the minor characters. If you've seen any of the mysteries, you kind of know they will pop in and out, and he's in this one. I liked the element how they used, up in the rooms and looking down at the pool to see the body come and go. It was in the water, now it's not. Maggie then being like, "Are you sure you saw that, Henry?" And I think that forms their relationship really well because they showed okay, like Henry's like, "No, yes, I saw that." And then Maggie kind of doubting it, but then saying, "Okay, let me go along with this and just see." And then to come to find out, yes, he was right. And that I think builds up trust between those two, which then we build on in future movies. So I think that kind of actually did set up those two together in a believable working relationship really well. I did notice that Henry was toned down. I don't know if you noticed this from our conversation. I don't know if I would have noticed this after not hearing from Dylan say this, but having him saying how he had to kind of tone Henry down a little bit. Like even he wasn't quite as observant as we had talked about last movie when, in that cooking class, how he was sharp and he didn't do a ton of that this episode and there wasn't those um things, the busybody observant nature. Like that didn't come out as
Right.
much in this movie. That that was kind of an interesting thing to kind of see. And then now I haven't watched That
Well,
third
he
one,
did
yeah.
know that he did know the eye drop poison stuff at the end.
Yeah, but that's not as much. I mean, that's kind of like a,
I guess
you know,
knowledge.
yeah, you kind of know that.
Okay.
So that's where I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out now in the next three movies, just to see, does he get to play a little bit more with that or not? I can't recall. Yeah, and then overall, I really liked the Maggie's cleverness too with the shoe size. Like my son was intrigued, like, why does she need to know that? And because he again was popping in and out, and he's 8 watching this, and so I'm like, oh, that's really cool the way she got his shoe size out and like was telling
Right.
the story, and just again having Henry being back there and jealous, and then vice versa when he's trying to tie the apron on and she's getting jealous. So for me, this episode is a win. Those are all some things I liked. So I took a lot. What do you have to add?
You know, I really didn't want to give it a 5 again, just because I'm like, oh, well, that sort of
Yeah,
waters
I don't.
down the 5,
Yeah,
but it's a 5.
yeah.
It and it's interesting because I watched it again after we talked to Dylan. So I'm watching it with this different lens now, right? And but the writing is just really good, especially the banter. The banter between Maggie and Henry just goes on and on. And I wrote down several of the ones, but like when they're driving out to the retreat and, Maggie started defending herself, like, oh, I am fun. And it's like, oh, yeah. And then Henry's like, I would love to see your karaoke of Cyndi Lauper. Like, I was just looking at Brooke, like trying to figure out, could she actually do the Cyndi Lauper, right? It was just, and also I'm a sucker for the karaoke. Just bring the karaoke, and it's kind of like you're, stick it in Minnesota or have a nice little cozy tiny town and you're in. Give me some karaoke, done deal. I'll love it. But it just, like I say, it just sort of set up the banter. Um, and then there's when they were later on when they were talking to the first suspect, the Michael guy, and Maggie's like, "Oh, you're antagonizing the suspect." And Henry's like, "No, I thought I was doing like good cop, bad cop with you." And then he carries that through a little ways. So there's just like all this fun little talk between the two of them. And then one of the best lines ever, and this may be one of the best lines ever in a mystery or rom com or anything, but when Maggie says to him, how your ego can be both enormous and fragile at the same time is beyond me. And Henry's just like, it's a gift. So the other thing which I really noticed about this episode, and it's more after talking to Dylan, is just the quirkiness of Henry. And it's just because I always thought of him being like sort of a cool character and, just having a lot of charm. But if you really look at him, he's got a lot of moments in this one where he is this kind of quirky, where Maggie's kind of like, uh, come on now, we got to get you in, but back in line here and stuff. So I'm a little more aware of all that's going on. So, and throughout it also, she kept just sort of saying to him that, he'll say something and she'll respond and he'll say, "Oh, thank you." And she's like, "It's not a compliment." She did that several times throughout the entire movie. I think it was like when, "Oh, his car is so clean," and, "Oh, Henry, you're in a class of your own." And he's like, "Thanks." And she's like, "Yeah, it's not a compliment." So maybe I felt a little bit similar to our relationship on the podcast here.
Me having to get you on board and focused.
Maybe. I would say probably if we were to ask people who was the quirkier of the two, I would have to say I'd
Uh-huh.
win that one.
I literally was thinking this. I was like, oh, this is funny. I mean, I have some quirks too, but I am not quite as, I don't think, quirk filled as you are. Um, well, Mystery Minute, this is, again, my son's contribution to the segment because I remembered the killers, obviously, since this is my favorite. Like that one. This one I for sure did. Now, the next few movies, I'm sure when I see them, I'll remember the killer right away, but right off the top of my head, I remember this killer. But my son watching to the end, he loved the ending scene with Henry when he used the frying pan to deflect the bullet. And, my son is like, I am so buying a set of these. Like he keeps reciting that. So he's like, wait, could that actually happen? Like, could you use a frying pan to do that? I'm like, hopefully we never have to find this out. But yeah,
Oh,
I don't know.
definitely.
I was like,
Definitely.
so that was his input. So yeah, for me, again, knowing the murderer does not take away from these older mysteries. I just enjoy them for what they are, and I enjoyed sharing that with my son. So, what about you?
I thought it was great. I actually did not remember who the killer was, but
Oh,
it kind of becomes evident because it is through elimination. Like, there's one sort of these characters left, so you know it's going to be them. But it was a nice little twist having Gretchen be like the accidental killer
mm.
in it. So that was pretty good. And then my other note was just, it may be my favorite ending of all time. Yes, the frying pan. And
You and the
the
9-year-old.
yes, the the line, I mean, come on. It was great. Who brings the frying pan to a gunfight? It was, and especially because it's, once again, it goes back to, you knew about it, Henry, and like I say, is being kind of cool and everything, like he did it. But then now you look at it and say, oh, he's quirky. You really realize the, luck of really what it was, but he was trying to play it off, right? Which, obviously they do, but you just realize that is a total Henry move of just being like, and the frying pan just being in the right spot. So
Oh. Well, romance, obviously we know they have great chemistry. So for me, I kind of picked a scene, which was my favorite. I loved that golf cart scene when they were driving down and the way they even filmed that. I thought that was great. But the looks that they gave each other in the golf cart, I think like Henry lets Maggie lead, which is just refreshing to see as well, of just like, I will step back and take the lead and you guide us in this path of where we are going with this mystery. Um, and again, I just think the smoldering looks, like if you just watch that scene and they're not even trying to, it's just again that chemistry that you either have it or you don't.
could not agree with you more. I think, obviously they're still just laying the groundwork. And my notes say just the way that they look at each other. So you and I are, perfect, perfect harmony with, how we're viewing it and where it's going. And I think it's the perfect pace too, because the first one, the introduction here, and even though they, like Dylan said, like, oh, this wasn't supposed to be the second episode, it's supposed to be later on. Even though they did go away together, which is a little bit weird considering they've known each other for a week, but I thought they handled it totally appropriate because there was this sort of lingery chemistry, but it wasn't anything rushed at all or anything about their relationship. Like, it was just, they really were friends who were just on this, retreat together. So it wasn't as if the other scene, by the way, that was awesome was when Henry lied, said he went to the gym and he was getting his massage. I thought that was funny.
Well, speaking of character corner or standout scene, I have a character as well as a scene, since you just brought up that scene. This scene was like way in the beginning, but as Henry enters the police station with the birthday cake, we see that he says Facebook friends and, you should try it sometime. And Maggie says Facebook and he says friends. I thought that was like a really, again, cute banter. So that scene was a standout for me. As well as I like the police officers, and I love that he had said he was trying to build up more for those three to have, because I think they are such great side characters. But since now knowing what we know, like they just weren't able to get more lines, not to the fault of him, but just from what was demanded of him as a writer. So that makes sense to me now as a viewer, because I always wanted a little bit more from that. Now I know why. But the character for me was Eric,
Of course
played
it
by
was.
Brendan Penny, of course. He was a chef. I loved the scene of him when he got to like cook and do his cooking demo. Because at first I thought we were just going to get the little pieces we have of him in, the conference hall, but then he actually got to do that cooking scene. So we got a little bit more. That was my highlight. What about you?
Well, mine was uh, Gretchen, and because it's Crystal Lowe,
Oh,
of who we get to
I
see.
that is so funny. So I was thinking that I watched like at the end they had all the credits and I saw her name and I'm like, was that That was Crystal.
Exactly.
Let's touch it. I did not even
Exactly.
think of it when I watched it until I saw her name go through.
It was the whole time watching it, and it wasn't until at the end when, they're down in the cage and stuff like that, where I thought it really looked like Crystal. And I did
Yeah,
not realize it was Crystal until that scene where I'm like, wait, that's who she is in this? And so I just liked her. I just, Crystal's awesome. She's been on the podcast. So it was, she's in love with the wrong guy, right? And putting up with all his bad shenanigans. I thought it was great when they're in the cooking demo and she's like, are you sure you don't want this right ingredient? And the guy's like, no, this is
fruit
my
powder.
take on it. And
Yes.
so that was all great. So,
Oh,
and by the way, I'll say, so just also a scene you're talking about the other detectives and the captain. The scene with the captain when she comes to the retreat and Maggie's like saying, "Oh, give me 24 hours," and just the way she interacts with them, she is. We've talked about her before. We both love her. She is a spectacular character. That it is a shame we couldn't get more of her. Because then at the very end too, when she's like, "Oh, I think we're going to be seeing more of you," but whenever she's there, I can't say she steals the scene, but she definitely is on par with Maggie and Henry. She's a force.
agreed. Agreed. Well, what do you have for trivia? Because I didn't bring any since I figured your trivia is great and
I
I
have
didn't know
two
what.
things,
See, perfect. You brought one for me.
and I did bring one for you.
Great, thanks.
Brendan Penny and uh, Dylan Neal were both in 50 Shades Freer or Gray or whatever it is.
I didn't
Gray,
know
50
Brendan
Shades of
Penny
Gray
was.
Freer, whatever.
Huh.
So he was in, I think that's the last. I never saw any of them, but
I
I
didn't see
think
any
it's
of
the
them either.
last one. So they were both in that one together. Talking to Dylan, he's like, I don't even remember my character in it, so it does not sound like he had a very big role. I don't know what Brendan's role was, but needless to say, they were both in that together.
Fun.
But as we said, we laid the groundwork last time about how Henry has mishaps in every episode. In this one, apparently they had like a real full day shoot, like all the way through the night and everything. And he cut his face on a zipper. And so they had to film him the entire night, which was, he said, was a really long night, all from one side of his face
Oh my
because
gosh.
he had a cut on his face from a
My
zipper, which
gosh.
I'm like, how do you cut yourself from
I
a
know. I'm like,
zipper? But hey, as we keep going through the episodes and he keeps dropping what happened to him, Dylan
wow.
may have a little bit of a klutz thing to him in when he was on set here.
Well, I'm impressed in the chopping skills that I was thinking it was going to be like the knife during the chopping skills that I brought up
Yeah.
at the beginning. I was like, circling back.
Nope,
No.
a zipper did him in.
Oh. Well, Hallmark and Chill. So, Murder She Wrote recommendation for me. A new one, season 2, episode 7. I didn't write down the title. But Jessica spends a little time at Lakeside Inn where she witnesses what appears to be a struggle and a woman falling into the lake. So I picked this one because this is
Of
one where
course.
Jessica goes away on a retreat. And what really reminded me of this episode was the garden shed. So Jessica goes into a garden shed to talk to a suspect in this garden shed. And that is where they found the victim from Gourmet Detective, the Kathleen, the reporter. That is where they found her missing body. And the sheds were very similar in feel. So that to me reminded me of it. Plus, there is quite a few, obviously getaways for Jessica. But this one was kind of that, I guess, more
Well,
of the wellness retreat ish type
the
feel.
body in the water, kind of the same
Yes.
premise thing there.
Yeah. So what about you?
Jessica really has literally done every mystery out there,
I know.
some way or another, right?
That's where if you're a fan of hers, I'm sure a lot of the mystery writers are, like you can take
The
that's why there is something for it.
Fletcher Groves, right?
Yes, yes.
Both cases and mistletoe mysteries. They're both Je- hail Jessica. For me, I left the whole mystery genre completely, and I'm going to the secret ingredient, and that's because it has Brandon Penny in it and Aaron Cahill, He's also a cook in it. It's like a cooking
That's a good
contest,
recommendation.
and love the movie. It's a super cute movie.
Is
I'll watch it whenever it's on. In fact, I'll get on the Hallmark Plus and watch it occasionally. Just when I'm like I feel like watching a rom com. It's super cute, and Brandon Penny is the chef, so it seemed like a good tie-in.
that is a good tie-in, and I just pulled it up on the app, so it is going to be airing February 16th at 10 a.m., which is a Sunday. So in case anyone's wanting to watch that, that is the next time it's airing if you don't have Hallmark Plus. So next week we are diving
Wait,
into gourmet. Sorry.
I have fan corner.
Oh gosh, I didn't even put that in there because I didn't do any polls. What do you got?
Dylan Neal had a whole bunch of people respond to the podcast. Since I told you people can respond right to the podcast and we get some fan mail. We don't know who it's actually from, but
Okay.
it'll say their city. And so from Albuquerque, New Mexico. This was a great interview. He's so intelligent and knowledgeable, super fun to listen to. Once again, I think we had a lot of DMs and just people reach out and say that to us directly, but someone left it here. I think it's the same person because it's also Albuquerque, New Mexico, but they said, so I signed up for Hallmark Plus for the $1.99 for 2 months, and this show is excellent. Really enjoying it. I'm assuming they were referring to Mistletoe Murders for that. And then this last one was interesting. This is from New Jersey and Middleton, New Jersey. It is obvious that Dylan Neal and Hallmark couldn't see eye to eye. If he wanted to make different type of stories, he should have gone to a different network. Hallmark doesn't exist to make him happy. That said, it was certainly eye-opening to learn of all the constraints and the challenges writers experience working for Hallmark. Now I understand that the less than stellar season that just passed may not have been entirely the writer's fault. Now, I will say, and I am guessing Dylan talked about this when we weren't recording since they made this comment, but a lot of time, basically, you're contracted, right? So here's the script, you buying it, and then they have the rights. And so you don't have flexibility. And he does write other things, but we being Hallmark, we're talking specifically Gourmet Detective, Cedar Cove. So we were talking specifically in the universe of Hallmark, but he does have a career that is not Hallmark specific as well.
Okay,
But
well, I actually have a review to read too. I just saw it because I looked it up on our podcast on Apple. So thank you. If you haven't reviewed our show, please feel free to do so. And this person left a review and it said brand. Now this person seems right up my alley. It is not me, everyone. Linda,
you wrote their own review.
Linda Yoga Girl. I know.
Andrea is so great. Eric's the worst.
No. So between Linda Yoga Girl, which obviously I'm a yoga person myself, new to Hallmark, and really am enjoying this podcast. Cozy mystery lover branching out from, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, Poirot, or what? I don't know that one.
Oh, Perot.
Columbo? Oh,
Perot.
Perot.
Yeah.
Columbo and Murder She Wrote. Thanks for the pod. So this person again, yoga, Murder She Wrote, right up my alley. Thanks for listening and giving us 5 stars. So if you have not, it does help get our podcast out there if you leave your review and write a nice comment as well, because that helps the algorithms pick it up and get seen. I will say that from having my podcast for many years, that does help. So thank you.
Very much appreciate.
Well, then looking up, well, actually, before we say next week, since we do have a new Hannah Swenson that was announced, that's coming February 6th. I don't remember the title of that one. Do you recall it off the top of your head?
Reality Bites.
Oh boy, Reality Bites. Okay, well,
But
that's
here's what's interesting.
yeah.
It's not like the ones that were announced earlier, like from based on the production. It's not one of those two. They had two different names. So it's kind of interesting. And I don't know if they just renamed one of them.
Well,
So
even in talking to Dylan, he referred to one of them as Spiced for Life or something, and there is no one that has
yeah.
spice in the title. So they
But
might have done some renaming.
the first one was supposed to be called um, A Pie to Die For. And that one's ironically directed by Crystal Lowe. And I talked to her and she said, no, that's not hers.
Oh, so what does that mean?
I don't know. I was opening up the website and the music started playing.
Oh, I was like, I don't hear any music. I was like, why
Oh,
are
you
you?
don't?
No,
Oh, well, I shouldn't have closed the website. So for
no.
me, I opened up the website that had what it was listed for. So I don't know what the other name is. So maybe that one has been made Reality Bites. But there was an ad on there and it just started blasting music into my headphones. So I kind
You're
of
saying
thought,
this, and
it's,
I was like, I don't know what's happening over there because you have your background set to San Francisco. So I was like, maybe a murder's taking place, and I don't even know because Eric is
yeah.
just making funny
Ooh,
faces
what
at me.
up? That would be, well, Death is Listening, I guess. That kind of was the whole premise of that one. So
Creepy. All
anything
right,
for viewers and listeners.
no, no, not that far. Oh,
I
well,
will
next week.
go great to all the depths, and I know you'll carry on.
Okay, yeah, yes. Oh, well, Gourmet
What's
Detective. Eric, let me just get this out.
so? What's next?
Next week we have the Death al dente, and we will have a guest on helping us review that because quite a few Hallmark lovers, this is their favorite mystery series. I know a lot of fans, Mystery 101 is the one, but I know a lot of maybe fellow podcasters, the Gourmet Detective is a lot of our favorites. So we have a fellow podcaster coming on with us. And then we'll also have a Tuesday episode of The Way Home and Spencer Sisters episode 2, which is the executives LG. So that's what's coming next week. So again, that episode I know was out of order if you watched it from Friendly. That is not what the second episode is, but it is actually the second episode. So heads up there.
Looking forward to
All
it.
right, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
It has. Till next week.
Bye.